on August 27th at African Development Summit, before hundreds of international journalists and dozens of world leaders. Captain Ibrahim Traoré made a move that shocked the modern politics. He issued a bold, public ultimatum to Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu. No hedging, no diplomatic sugarcoating, just unshakable resolve. Looking directly into the cameras, Traoré declared, "Mr. Netanyahu, you have 48 hours to apologize to Africa, or you will no longer be welcome here." It was not a threat of war. It was a strike of dignity. The conference hall fell silent. Within minutes, clips of the moment began circulating worldwide, igniting debates from Johannesburg to Washington. What followed was not just about two leaders, it was about Africa demanding respect on the world stage. This diplomatic earthquake started with a leak. According to multiple sources, during a closed-door G7 meeting, Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu allegedly made remarks that African leaders considered deeply offensive, particularly targeting Burkina Faso's president, Ibrahim Traoré. He dismissed them as political opportunists, naive in their criticism of Israel's Gaza campaign. The leaked language was even harsher. Words like crude and militantly theatrical to describe Africa's response. Worse still, Netanyahu hinted at backing IMF debt, crackdowns on African nations, and floated a Western-sponsored pact that could sideline Africa entirely. When the leak broke, outrage swept across the continent. On African social media, hashtags exploded. Africa is not your pawn dominated headlines. Yet Traoré chose silence at first, a silence that, in hindsight, was deliberate. At the Addis Ababa summit, he finally spoke. With unwavering resolve, he proclaimed, "Africa will not be your pawn, nor the subject of debt chains or Western experiments. This is not a game of alliances. It is a question of dignity." The ultimatum was clear. Apologize within 48 hours, or face Africa's united rejection. The room froze. Journalists stopped mid-keystroke. Delegates exchanged looks of disbelief. In that instant, Burkina Faso was no longer just a small nation. It became the epicenter of a global storm. The countdown began, and the world reacted. Social media lit up. Within hours, millions shared the clip. African leaders and citizens alike hailed it as a rare act of fearless defiance. South Africa's foreign minister reposted it. Finally, someone said it. The former Kenyan ambassador to the UN added, "This is the future of African diplomacy. Fearless and incorruptible." Meanwhile, Israel's response was muted. A vague denial. No direct mention of Traoré. Ironically, the silence only fueled the momentum. From government offices to universities, Traoré's words became a rallying cry. For the first time in years, African unity was visible, urgent, and real. Even in Burkina Faso, where jihadist violence displaced millions, Traoré was celebrated as a figure of resistance and hope. His boldness captured the imagination of youth, with many comparing him to Thomas Sankara. And just like Sankara, Traoré's defiance was rewriting the rules of African leadership. Demonstrations erupted not only in Ouagadougou, but in London, Kingston, and Paris. Diaspora communities waved Burkina Faso's flag, chanting, "Respect Africa." Inside Africa, Traoré's domestic reforms, nationalizing gold mines, building the first gold refinery, distributing tractors, gave credibility to his bold foreign stance. People didn't just hear words, they saw action. Still, risks loomed. Conflict raged. Human rights groups criticized harsh conscriptions and arrests. Yet the ultimatum wasn't seen as reckless. It was seen as clarity. Across African parliaments, lawmakers debated trade deals with Israel. South Africa, Namibia, and Tanzania suggested continent-wide reassessments. ECOWAS leaders whispered about stronger foreign policy coordination. The message was simple. African dignity is non-negotiable. Communities once divided by war now found unity in Traoré's words. Even displaced families repeated the ultimatum around campfires. For the first time in decades, Africa wasn't defending, it was demanding. The ultimatum shook financial powers too. International institutions worried about sanctions. Western envoys rushed to private talks, trying to gauge Traoré's true intentions. But across Africa, his silence afterward was praised as strategy, forcing Netanyahu into a corner. By the end of the 48 hours, no apology came, but something bigger had happened. Traoré had shifted the boundaries of African diplomacy. In Senegal, Ghana, South Africa, even leaders once skeptical admitted his stance had set a new standard. For ordinary Africans, the message was powerful. Africa builds its own table. Those who wish to join must come with respect. Diaspora communities in Harlem, London, and Johannesburg marched, lifting Sankara's portraits beside Traoré's. The symbolism was impossible to ignore. A new wave of uncompromising African leadership was here. Globally, reactions were mixed. Moscow and Beijing amplified the moment as defiance against Western dominance. European leaders stayed cautious, calling for dialogue but showing unease. In the US, analysts debated whether Traoré's boldness was dangerous or revolutionary. But one truth stood out. Ibrahim Traoré had changed the terms of engagement. He did not beg for recognition. He demanded it. This wasn't just politics, it was history in motion. Back in Burkina Faso, the ultimatum became more than a headline. It became a mirror of pride. From farmers to students, from traders to leaders, people repeated the same truth. Sovereignty is not granted, it is claimed. As Traoré himself declared, "We do not ask for permission to be free. We rise to claim it." Guys, if the spirit of Ibrahim Traoré has touched your heart, subscribe and share this story. Let the world know that Africa's voice will be heard not as an echo, but as a force.